Prairie Yard and Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Closed captioning is provided by Mark and Margaret Yankel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org.
Gardening is an enjoyable activity that we love to share with others. Our individualism is displayed through the artistic ability we use in colors, patterns, and form to create our unique gardens. Rarely does the public get to see our work. Join me on Prairie Yard and Garden as we look at a private garden in a public place. Each of us has those unique gardens that we'd love to share with the public, but so many times it's a very private backyard that the public never gets to see. But today we found Bruce Wenner, who has a very public garden next to a bike pathway. As you put your garden together, what did you have in mind here in this public trail?
Well, we had, like you said, a lot of people were going by, and we wanted a little bit of privacy for our house. So we decided it'd be nice if we could put something that was natural in place. And so we just started growing the arborvitae. And the arborvitae have been doing really well here. And every year I kind of put stuff in between the arborvitae. And last year I had the sunflowers. And they got really huge. I mean, they were like almost 12 feet tall.
Wow.
And so when the kids would come by, the little kids in the strollers and stuff, they'd stand underneath these big sunflowers and they'd go, "Wow, Mom, look at this," you know, and they were like dwarfed compared to the size of the plants, and it's always exciting. So every year I kind of change it up a little bit. My wife and I, we work on, changing things up, and this year we have the cannons growing.
What other things have you done along the walkway to give yourself a little privacy?
Well, this year I was working on a fence. I have a fence where, at the end of the garage and then in between the garage and the shed, where, I usually keep my wheelbarrows and stuff in between the shed and the garage, and I have a canoe I keep back there, and people could see all this junk, and I didn't want to have it distract from other things, and so I decided to build a fence. But I didn't want an ordinary fence. I wanted something that would look nice and have some interesting features in it that, you wouldn't see everywhere else. I have a gazebo that not really a gazebo, it's kind of like a cascading gazebo that I built in the back with kind of an oriental flair. And so I wanted to build a fence that had similar characteristics, kind of an oriental flair with some different things in it. And I was thinking about in the winter how bleak it gets and how it'd be nice if we had something that had some color to it. And so I thought, well, why don't I put up a fence and put in some glass blocks? And I started researching glass blocks online, and I found that you could buy these colored glass blocks. It came out pretty good. I put the fence together. It's all tongue and groove and mortise and tenon, so it's all kind of interlocking with no nuts or bolts.
And what did you make the material?
I used cedar. I sealed the cedar and then painted it with a lacquer base outdoor paint, and I'm hoping it will hold up for a long time. My wife and I, we wanted something that would match our garage and our house, and so we thought we should probably go with the same color scheme.
Well, I've been impressed with it. I like them little colored blocks up there. It just adds a touch to the fence that we normally would not see. Well, let's take a little stroll down your pathway here and see what other things you've done to make your unique private garden very public. Well, Bruce, I bet when people walk past this part of your garden, they just go, "Wow, what a beautiful sight."
Yes, we've noticed that also, and they come around the corner and they don't expect this to be back here, at least those who haven't been this way before, and so they stop and they look and get a lot of compliments about it, and people are impressed and they want to know how long we've been working at it and what we've done, and different things that we put into it. And it's always fun to stop and take some time to show the public, different people, what's going on back here. And we've used a lot of different things. It used to be a vegetable garden. My wife and my stepdaughter Angie, they got a bunch of trees one year from the school department, and decided, well, we'll put them in the garden. And so we put them in the garden. Then we decided we didn't want to try to grow vegetables anymore, and we had all these rocks, and my wife decided that she wanted to put some paths through the garden. And so then she made the paths out, and then I decided I wanted to fill in all the blank spaces with some hostas and other plants. And I always liked trees, and I like tree kind of products and stuff, like stumps, old stumps and hollowed out cavities and stuff. And so I would bring them home, and I would incorporate them into the garden setting. They add a different type of, more of a natural, softer look, in my opinion.
Sure.
I know. It's been fun. It's been fun. I think some of the ideas I had haven't always worked so great, and then some of them worked really, they worked out better than what I thought they would work out.
Well, I noticed this big stump on the end down there with the impatiens. That's just perfect in that corner.
Actually, it's a dogwood tree that got hit by lightning over by Long Prairie, and the gentleman, I asked him if I could have that or buy that from him, and he said sure. And I gave him $10, and he was nice enough to bring it all the way to my house and drop it off. And so I filled it up with black dirt and planted it. And each year we put a little something different in it because it wouldn't winter over very well for a perennial, so we put an annual in it every year.
Well, and that red just kind of stands out even though it's in the shade.
Yes, it does. I was impressed. I wasn't sure the red would be a good color back here. In the past, I've used the purples and the whites and stuff, and this year we didn't do a lot of annuals. We just did a few annuals, and it turned out just fine.
What about a couple of these other stumps I see along the line here?
Well, they are gifts from Lake Agnes, which is right down there by City Park. They were floating in the water, and so I decided I'd walk down there with my wagon, put them in my wagon, and bring them home, and I'd place them in the garden. And they look really, I think they look neat in the garden. It's fun to see a chipmunk on top of a log, or a squirrel on top of a log eating something, or the birds perched on top of the logs, and you get a different look to it. It's not all just plants. There's some other things in there that are more natural. And they were cheap, too. It didn't cost anything. So that's even the best part about it. You can bring in interesting things, and it doesn't have to cost you, a whole lot of money.
Well, I'm curious. I notice we have black walnut trees above us here, and everybody is always so concerned about the growing plants under black walnuts, but hostas seem to do well.
Yes, the hostas have done well. One of the things that I've done to help kind of buffer some of the poison that the walnuts emit through the ground, the roots kind of emit a poison that kills off a lot of different types of plants, is I tend to amend the soil a lot. I add a lot of mulch to it, and then I also like to add other ingredients into that soil to kind of help offset some of the poison and also the nitrogen draw, because whenever you have a lot of trees in an area, they pull a lot of the nutrients out of the ground. So if you're not amending that soil and adding different things to it, pretty soon your plants get real spindly and they get really kind of tired looking, and that's worked for me. I've had different types of perennials that I've had in here before I knew about the poison from the walnut trees, and they died on me. And I'm thinking, well, why did they die? They were doing so well, and all of a sudden they just kind of fell over and died. It's part of gardening. You learn as things grow, and as the time goes by, you find out what works, what doesn't work, and sometimes things work one year and then they won't work the next year, depending upon the climate as well too. So
I see you have some wandering paths here. Is there any unique design that was created?
My wife, she laid out the paths, and she wanted to kind of break it up a little bit and to allow people to kind of meander around so that wouldn't be a straight line, to be more of a natural, kind of a nature type setting, where nothing's really perfect. I mean, everything's a little bit off and a little bit askew, and the path is just that too. And the rocks add a natural look to it, and I like rocks myself because you don't have to paint them, you don't have to do anything with them. Once you put them there, they're there, and it adds different colors to the garden and different textures. And
Well, Bruce, I see the path takes a little left turn. What's on the other side?
well, let's go over there and look, Larry.
Well, Bruce, I see we got a wishing well here. Give me a little background on this.
Well, when we first started gardening, my wife and I, we wanted to do kind of a formal beds with a lot of different bricks. And Well, it really wasn't working very well with the rock that we had. And so we decided to take the brick, and I decided I wanted to stack them up. But the bricks all had a lip on the back of them that kind of interlocked, so I had to cut that off with a saw. And I cut it off, and then I had an old dog kennel when I had my dog, and I thought I didn't want to throw the wood away, so I decided I should build a wishing well and put it inside this here circular thing. And anyway, it turned out pretty nice. We were pretty pleased with it. And then I had the old fence from over by the garden, and I didn't want to throw that wood away, so I thought I'll cut it up and make birdhouses out of it. And now I've got a lot of wrens that are living in it, the tree swallows live in it, the bluebirds come by and live in them, and so it's always pleasant to see the birds making use of those things.
Well, it's very unique design. Did you find a pattern, or is it all in your head?
It just all just kind of materialized in my head. You know, I knew kind of what I wanted in a way, and then I decided I needed to have light come through, and I needed also to have the water to be able to come through to water the bed. If it was a solid roof, you know, the water couldn't, you know, get to the plants, and I didn't want to have to be out here watering all the time to offset that. So,
Well, what a great concept. Wonderful. And got hostas here. You must be a hosta fan.
I am a hosta fan. As you can see, it's almost all shade back here all day long, and because of the shade and because of the fact that the hostas, the leaves are so beautiful, I find them really beautiful and unique, different colors, different shapes, different sizes and stuff. And well, anyway, I decided I wanted to do hostas. I wanted it to all kind of fill in and to be colorful during the growing season. I have some favorite here, and this the Aeromarginata montana is like one of my favorite. It grows really large. It's not that big yet, but you know, it's getting bigger every year. When I first bought the plant, I just bought one plant, and I separated it into just one little twig, and so it's been about 4 years now, 5 years, and the plant's starting to materialize and it's starting to look rather nice.
Have you had any slug problems or anything else occurring?
I have had a slug problem. I think everybody who has hostas and stuff has a slug problem. I don't use any pesticides or chemicals. I've asked about them. I've experimented with them a little bit, but I don't want to use that in this area. So what I've done instead is I get out here at night with my flashlight in a little plastic bag, and I'll shine my flashlight and I'll walk around and I'll pick them off because they're right on top. But that's how I get rid of my slugs. If I come out here like during the week, 2 or 3 times during the week, and pick off the slugs, it really makes a big difference, especially first in the year. Because if you let that slug live early on, he's going to lay eggs, they're going to produce little ones, and pretty soon you've got a problem.
Well, I see you have some astilbes in here also. I imagine that really brightens the garden in early summer.
It does. The astilbes are kind of one of my favorite because it really adds a lot of different colors back here. I've got the red ones and the white ones and the purple ones, and there's some fuchsia ones. They're really vibrant. The colors are really vibrant, and it really just lightens things up back here with different colors. And they're easy to grow. They like to grow in shade. They're a good companion with hostas, and so they work for me.
Yeah, and they give us a little structure here, a little taller than the hostas, and
yes,
it works
they do.
out very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that we've got some corabels.
Yes, I bought a couple plants, and they were really, really bushy, and I decided to split them. My wife and I, we don't have a great big income, so whenever I get plants, if I get a chance to propagate or to split or divide a plant, I'll do that to just kind of stretch my dollar a little bit more, because whenever it costs a lot to have a garden, especially if you have to buy everything full size. And well, this way here, you know, you can make it work.
Well, I noticed over here we got a little gazebo. Give me a little background on that.
Well, we had a hill here. There was a hill here originally, and there was a great big lilac bush. And so I tore out the lilac bush, and that's where this hosta mound came. But the hill, I never liked to mow the hill, and I wanted to kind of do something so I wouldn't have to mow the hill. And so I decided I was going to make this cascading arbor or gazebo or whatever you want to call it. I don't know exactly what to call it. And I wanted to have it kind of have a little bit of an oriental flair. And I like to work with wood, and I wanted everything to kind of be like be interlocking is what I really want things to have, the interlocking. And I wanted it to have air flow through it, but yet I wanted it to kind of have openings as well so people could look through and see different plants, and I wanted the vines to be able to grow up over the top of it. And I thought, well, I'm going to go with this, and I looked online at different ideas, and then I decided this is what I want to do for myself, and so it turned out pretty good. It's not exactly what I wanted, but I'm very pleased with what I have.
Well, you got a couple hanging pots that really accent that walkway.
Yes, my wife and I, we decided we were not going to buy hanging pots. We had some extra pots left over from last year, and so we actually planted our own hanging pots this year. We bought a few annuals and we put them in there, and they're doing quite well now.
And you got a big snowball hydrangea there that's doing quite well?
Yes, there are a couple hydrangeas there. There's a key lime hydrangea, and then there's one called Pinky Winky. It will turn pink later on in the year. As it gets further into autumn, the flower will actually turn pink, and it's quite beautiful.
Well, let's walk up the trail a little bit further and see what you beds look like as you get closer to the house.
Okay.
Well, Bruce, what's this area here?
Well, whenever I was dividing a hosta and I had extra hostas that I didn't have a place to put them, I decided I would put them over here by the pine tree. And it wasn't the most ideal place for them, but what I've done is I've kind of amended the soil and added a lot of composted material in here to kind of offset the effects of the pine tree. And you know, the other problem with the pine tree is always such a big nitrogen draw. Sure. So in order to get things to live back here, I had to do something with the soil. And I checked the pH back here, and it was like a 7.8 underneath the pine tree, which is surprising because you would think it would be acidic, but it isn't. It's very alkaline. I did 4 soil tests. I did a soil test out in the front garden. I did a soil test out in the garden over there by the trail, and I did a soil test right behind me as well. And most of the soils are about 7.3 to 7.4 to 7.6, and this was 7.8, so this was the most alkaline area in the garden.
Well, you talk about adding compost. How much compost did you put in here?
Well, I will generally start out with a base compost of about 6 inches. And what I've found is that whenever I add about 6 inches of compost, it will settle the first year to about 4 inches. And then 1 year later, that same 6 inches is down to about 3 inches or less. And after 2 years, you've got about 2 inches of compost left. So I like to add compost on a regular basis wherever I notice it's starting to get thin. It helps to keep the moisture in. It also keeps the weeds out, you know, because to weed something, it's a lot of work to go through and weed everything all the time. So the compost is a plus. Moisture in, it decomposes and it adds nutrients to your soil back into the ground. It acts as a buffer towards some of the acidity or the alkalinity of the soil, and it's just been a good thing all around.
Well, obviously it's working very well for you. I mean, these plants are very healthy looking and thriving. Got lots of fullness to the plant, and flowers on the hostas are blooming well. Mm-hmm. So you've done an excellent job. Well, I noticed that we got a lot of rocks here. What? You must love carrying rock.
Well, I do love rocks. I'm a rock hound. I love to look for agates and different things, but I wanted to incorporate the rocks for the border. You know, I used to work down at Munsinger Gardens in St. Cloud at the St. Cloud Park Department, and they had a lot of rocks down there, and I've always liked rocks. Out on the farm, we have to pick rocks all the time. And so I checked with a gravel company here in town, Ferguson's, and they had a big rock pile by the bike trail, and I said, well, how much for a load of rock? And so they told me what it would cost, and I decided I would go ahead and spend the money and have them brought in. And then I would wheel a pile over, and my wife would sit down and she'd roll the rocks into place, and so she did most of the designing, you know, and I just fill in the gaps. I provide the raw materials, and she did most of the designing, and I fill in the plants. And
well, what a beautiful view you have from is that your living room, I assume, there, and can look out on the garden and the beautiful coneflowers and now the hostas. This is very picturesque.
It's been a lot of fun, Larry. It has been a joy. You know, we keep adding different things. I've added 3 different types of bleeding hearts. Now there's actually 4 different types of bleeding hearts, and they do really well in the shade. And then I've been also introducing ferns. I've got, I think, 5 or 6 different varieties of ferns which do really well in the shade. So you can add a little different things into a shade garden that you know, bring color to it at different times of the year, and they grow so well. And I figure, well, gosh, why not put stuff in there that'll do well?
You've talked about compost, and you maintain a compost pile. Can we go take a look at that?
We can.
I have a question. I'd like to plant some low-maintenance shrub roses in my yard. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I've got 3 great candidates. The new roses from the University of Minnesota, these great Minnesota names, Sven, Lena, and Ole. And these roses were selected especially to be grown in Minnesota. They're winter hardy, so that a lot of people shy away from roses because they don't want to do the rose cone or the burying or the mulching or all those different things. But these 3 roses will make it through the winter, and they bloom repeatedly during the summer. So that's how they vary from the old-fashioned roses. As some people, when they hear the name shrub rose, they think of the old-fashioned roses that are beautiful, but only usually bloom in June. These new roses, Fen and Oli and Lena, bloom in waves, all starting in June, all the way through the summer, and here we are in late September and still have a real nice flowers on these roses. In addition to that, they're very disease resistant. They don't require any pesticide applications for fungus diseases. The #1 problem on roses is black spot fungus, and these roses are immune to that disease. They may have an occasional aphids or something on them, but you can usually deal with those sometimes just by spraying them hard with a hard spray from your garden hose, or just letting natural predators and stuff deal with them. We have had very few any insect or disease problems on these roses.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
Well, Larry, this is my active compost pile, and what I've kind of done is I put a layer of sphagnum peat moss over the top of it to seal it in a little bit and to help bring down the alkalinity of a compost pile. Usually when you're composting stuff, it has a high alkalinity, and you want to bring that down a little bit. And the other use of the sphagnum peat moss over the top of the pile, that it helps to trap the odors, and it basically kind of absorbs some of the ammonia odors from the decomposition of plant material. Anyway, I have a thermometer here. I usually keep track of the temperature of my pile with a compost thermometer. It's usually an 18-inch thermometer. You can buy it online. And you want to keep your compost pile about 130 to 150 degrees, 130 to 150 degrees for active decomposition anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's in this pile?
Well, everything from my garden ends up back over here into this pile, and it's rather small right now considering how big it was earlier this year. But all the leaves from the oak trees and the maples and the ash and all that gets in here, all the hosta leaves, all the debris in the garden ends up back into the pile, and then I add a little something special in there to kind of help kick it off. And
special?
Yes.
Secret ingredient?
My secret ingredient is the famous Lake Agnes carp.
Aha.
I mean, it's no secret. People have been doing it for hundreds and thousands of years, I bet you. And what I've done is I usually pull apart the pile. I have a lot of wood chips in there because I add wood chips always to my garden, and every spring I pull out a lot of wood chips, and there's extra wood chips. So the wood chips actually act as an absorber. It helps to absorb things. It also keeps it from getting compact, because normally compost piles will get really compact, and you need to have that air in there so it's an active pile. It becomes an aerobic pile rather than anaerobic, and you want to have the air circulation into the pile, and you keep it from getting compact. So I have the wood chips down there, and then I have all the other stuff inside there, and the pile is usually about 4 feet tall and about 4 feet wide, and my pile is about, 10 feet long, 10 to 12 feet long. Mm-hmm. And I'll usually take the top half of that pile off, and then I'll put my fish in there, and then I'll cover it back up with about 18 inches of material. And that works pretty good. Would you like to see me put a fish in there?
Let's open this up a little bit and see what's there. I'll hold that thermometer for you.
Okay.
Well, look at the steam is coming out.
Yeah, it's the temperature on the pile today is roughly right around 140 degrees.
Well, how long does it take for a fish to decompose?
Depending upon the size of the fish, between 7 and 10 days. The larger the fish, the longer it takes. The smaller the fish, the quicker they go.
And the bones may take a little longer.
Actually, the bones, everything's usually completely gone. There's usually nothing left of that fish within, like I said, 7 to 10 days. I put a couple carp in here,
yep,
last week sometime, so I don't think they're fully decomposed yet.
Well, the secret is maybe catching carp.
Yes, there is a secret to that as well. I've been using Sara Lee pound cake.
I see.
So I will, I'll generally pull the pile apart as much as possible.
Yep.
And I caught a couple fish last night, so I'll take a carp, I'll lay it in there. I have 2 of them.
That was a good sized carp.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then I won't pack it down. I'll just lay it in there really nice like, and I'll cover them back up again.
Uh-huh.
And as you notice, there's a lot of wood material in here, wood chips, hardly any grass material, a lot of leaf material in there, and some sawdust. I'll just bury that back up with my fancy pitchfork here. And the nice thing about an active compost pile, Larry, is once you have that heat up to 130 and 140 degrees, no skunks like to go in there, no raccoons like to go in there, keeps the dogs out of there. It's just too hot for them to even think about eating that. They may go in there once, they might kind of dig in there a little bit, and once they hit that heat, they leave it and they never come back.
Really?
Yes.
Because we heard about people who in the past have put some meat in there, and of course they tear the pile apart, but obviously they didn't have the compost pile working like you do.
Right. So I guess the trick is it has to be an active pile. You have to have the heat in your pile. If you don't have the heat in the pile, it's not going to deter the raccoons or the skunks or the dogs.
Well, and the odor coming off of that is very pleasant, very earthy smelling.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no stink to it that so many people would associate with something like this.
What I'll do, Larry, once this has all been taken care of in the spring, I check the temperature to make sure the temperature is ambient temperature, or basically room temperature, it's the temperature of the surrounding areas. I'll bring it into my yard and I'll run it through a sifter, and I'll sift out any of the big material, and what I'll end up with in the end is something really, really nice and fine. This is actually incorporated into the soil with the plant.
Okay.
So this is my fertilizer. This is my organic fertilizer. I don't use any synthetic fertilizer. I just use organic fertilizer that I basically compost myself.
And then you turn this pile periodically?
I do. I've turned it twice this year already. And I've been recently studying up on that, and I'm finding out that you don't actually have to turn this pile.
As long as there's some air moving through it?
Right. You can insert a tube, like a 6-inch diameter plastic tube, and put some holes in the top of it. It's called passive aeration. And that's supposed to work excellent. And I haven't tried it yet. I want to try it, but I'm learning.
Yes.
I'm learning.
Well, very good, Bruce. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your private garden to the public, and also telling us about your secrets to good composting.
Well, you're welcome, Larry. It's a good use of the carp that are kind of polluting our lake, and it's a win-win situation all the way around.
Closed captioning is provided by Mark and Margaret Yackel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org.